Hey y'all, it's Erica. I hope you enjoyed our episode on Ada Lovelace. I loved learning about her mind-blowing discoveries and intellectual accomplishments. But as a lover of the scandalous, I was totally enraptured by a footnote of her story, the Lady Caroline Lamb. If you haven't listened to the whole episode yet, please do so now. This supplement is just a little dessert, an extra sweet at the end of the main course. It will have spoilers. You have been warned. For a quick background on our subject, Lady Caroline was born into the upper nobility and married to Ada's uncle William Lamb, who would later become Prime Minister under Queen Victoria. She was also niece to Georgiana Cavendish, the Duchess of Devonshire. Gosh, so many potential episodes in this social circle. She is credited with one of the most famous descriptions of Lord Byron, her eventual lover, calling him mad, bad, and dangerous to know, although it's never actually found in her personal writings. He, in turn, later referred to her as, quote, the cleverest, most agreeable, absurd, amiable, perplexing, dangerous, fascinating little being that lives now or ought to have lived 2,000 years ago, unquote. Quite frankly, I would be up for that description, and it seems these two were a match and gasoline just waiting to explode, and boy, did they. The two lovers met after Caroline read his work, Childe Harold. Her friend told her, he has a club foot and bites his nails. But Caroline replied, quote, if he was as ugly as Aesop, I must know him. Personally, I don't know if I could be persuaded to leave house and home for an ugly man, no matter how talented he was, but no one asked me. They were infatuated with each other, although Byron initially thought she was too skinny to ever have a good figure, which is a box I could check for the lauded poet. I have never been accused of being too skinny. Additionally, he found her weird because she had a penchant for dressing as a page boy. I cannot argue with that one. If I were to dress like a male, it would be a very suave, debonair gentleman with lots of buttons, but I digress. Byron really seemed to crave control rather than any actual romantic connection with the people he was entangled with, not just Caroline. But in this case, he wanted her to admit she loved him more than her husband William. Byron told her, quote, my God, you shall pay for this. I'll wring that obstinate little heart. Not exactly what I would hope my lover would say to me, but soon she did love him enough to contemplate leaving her husband at Byron's suggestion in May 1812. This was just 2 months after they had known each other. He was probably testing her commitment, for it's unlikely he actually meant to flee England with her. But he needed to know she loved him more than anything, even her very comfortable life. And so he hinted at, quote, elopement. His friends persuaded him to leave London before that could happen, and Caroline was unbothered and undeterred by this. She, started writing him letters, but it became pretty obsessive. Those around the two did everything in their power to help end the relationship, often keeping the two apart and arranging opposing travel. Her in-laws were completely disgusted by the affair and demanded she go to Ireland with her husband. Before she left, she sent a tuft of her own pubic hair to Byron as a farewell, and friends, thank God, this was effectively the end of their romantic relationship. This was the breakup letter he sent to her, which she kept until her dying day. Quote, my dearest Caroline, if tears which you saw and know I am not apt to shed, if the agitation in which I parted from you, if all I have said and done, and am still but too ready to say and do, I have not sufficiently proved what my real feelings are and must ever be towards you, my love. I have no other proof to offer. You know I would with pleasure give up all here and all beyond the grave for you, and in refraining from this, must my motives be misunderstood? I care not who knows this, what use is made of it. I was and am yours freely and most entirely to obey, to honor, to love, and fly with you when, where, and how you yourself might and may determine, unquote. In the same breath, he began an affair with her close friend, the Countess of Oxford, and boy, was that utter chaos. Caroline, of course, and understandably, was pissed. And in a petty move, Byron and the Countess would formulate responses to Caroline's letters to spurn and humiliate her. They read something like this, quote, "I am no longer your lover, and since you oblige me to confess it by this truly unfeminine persecution, learn that I am attached to another whose name it would be, of course, dishonorable to mention. I shall ever remember with gratitude the many instances I have received of the predilection you have shown in my favor. I shall ever continue to be your friend, if your ladyship will permit me so to style myself. And as a first proof of my regard, I offer you this advice. Correct your vanity, which is ridiculous. Exert your absurd caprices upon others, and leave me in peace." And again I say, with friends like these, who needs enemies? It's not exactly like the aforementioned breakup letter, now is it? And don't worry, Caroline got the last laugh because she included that response almost verbatim in her novel, Glenarvan. And Caroline obviously was devastated, absolutely devastated by the treatment she received from Byron. He would emotionally toss her aside and denigrate her in public, but also would reel her back in with a devoted letter or a carefully placed comment that would circulate back to her. Because of this, Caroline kind of lost it. She was now emotionally agitated and her figure increasingly emaciated. Byron remarked to the Lady Melbourne that he was haunted by a skeleton. He said this to her mother-in-law, but he was both repulsed and fascinated by her devotion. During the Christmas season, Byron stayed with the Oxfords. He was there under the same roof with this married couple and effectively screwing the wife. So, Caroline got word of this and held a dramatic bonfire at the Melbourne country home in Hertfordshire. Village girls dressed in white while Caroline threw copies of his letters and other tokens into the fire, because you can't throw the original ones, just the copies. A figure of Byron was burned in effigy while her page recited lines she had written, quote, "Burn, fire, burn, while wondering boys exclaim, and gold and trinkets glitter in the flame." So not exactly a healthy response, but I want to leave their relationship here because there is too much tea to spill, but I will leave you with this little nugget. Caroline was not all crazy pants all the time. In fact, after Byron left England, her life did not devolve into complete hysterics. She published 3 novels, 2 accomplished parodies of Byron's poetry, several poems in literary journals, and a number of songs. Unsurprisingly, the response to her work was harsh, and it made her wonder why, quote, "Everybody wishes to run down and suppress the vital spark of genius I have, and in truth it is but small. I am not vain, believe me, nor selfish, nor in love with my authorship, but I am independent as far as a mite and a bit of dust can be," unquote. The overreaction and criticism to Caroline's literary, quote, "offenses" compliments her biographer's obsession with her drunkenness, temper tantrums, and crockery smashing. Those who have judged her novels and poetry have treated them as an extension of her personality, at best the production of a neurotic mind, and at worst, a devious attempt to hurt Byron. Because literally, it all has to come back to him. It can't just be her literary efforts by herself, but hey, I'm on a soapbox here. To me, it sounds like a whole lot of criticism of a woman who is emotionally mistreated and slandered. Did she do some really inappropriate Dr. Phil level crap? Absolutely. But I believe much of that blame rests on Byron. That's just this chronicler's opinion. And that, my friends, is that. Remember to give us a follow and subscribe, and take a look around our Instagram account for the most up-to-date news. Our episodes can be found on all major streaming services as well as on our website, thepithychronicle.com. If you are so inclined, you can join us on Patreon for early and exclusive content. We'll be back next week with more deliciously scandalous content. Until then, I'm Erica, and I am pithily yours. I must give a huge shout out to the Lady Caroline Lamb website. They had such great information and detailed transcriptions of Caro's letters. Their work was instrumental in putting this small bite together. As always, the information is linked in the main episode's show notes.